guys, to another Beating Alpha episode. This is episode 176, and we have another very special guest on today's show, and his name is Jack Bosch. So again, a little bit of information about Jack. So he's established in 2002 by real estate investment gurus Jack and Michelle Bosch. So Land Profit Generator is the world's premier incubator of land flipping businesses. So Jack Bosch is a well-recognized business owner, entrepreneur, and a real estate investor, and is the genius behind the Land Profit Generator system. He's the author of the best-selling financial literacy book, Forever Cash. So go and look for that. And host of the much followed Forever Cash podcast series, which of course you're going to find on iTunes and the rest of the podcast, I'm pretty sure. So Jack immigrated to the United States from Germany in 1997 with just 2 suitcases with a load of student debt. Since 2002, Jack and co-founder Michelle Bosch have purchased and sold over 4,000 plus properties, establishing themselves among the most successful land flipping experts in the USA. So in 2008, Jack and Michelle set out on a mission to transform the lives of others by sharing the Land Profit Generator system developed through trial and error, then enabled their success. So today, hundreds of other students are working on Land Profit Generator system to achieve financial freedom and long-term success through land flipping. To find out more, of course, there's going to be all these links in the show notes, including the website. One of those is Jack Bosch or landprofitgenerator.com. And YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and the rest of the social media is going to be there for you to follow up with Jack or Michelle and talk about real estate investing through social media. So Jack, personally, I want to say a big thank you again for coming over and spending this quality time with me. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very happy to talk with you because, again, before I started to record this podcast, I said, look, I came across multiple multifamily investors, syndicators, single family investors, flippers, investing in, different mobile home parks, storage units, but land flipping, that was kind of new for me. So can you give us, a little bit of your own personal background, again, with you coming to the United States, and how have you discovered land flipping?
Sure, absolutely. So again, my name is Jack Bosch. I live in the United States. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, actually in a part of Phoenix called Paradise Valley, but it's the greater Phoenix, Arizona. And I have been in the United States for now over 23 years. But initially, I came here just to finish my college degree. I was in college in Germany. I was having part-time jobs. I was working. I was enjoying the student life, right, with all that comes with it, the parties and the thing, and learning something. And I finished up here to get an MBA in the United States. And then I had this career goal in Germany of getting a job and going to the career ranks and doing things like this idea. But then a couple of things happened. First of all, I liked it in the US. I liked the American spirit of kind of can-do attitude, irrespective of the politics that's going on right now with both sides kind of going at each other. But I still like the American spirit overall. But most importantly, I met this wonderful young lady. Her name is Michelle. She's an immigrant from another country herself. She is from Honduras, Central America. Literally 3 weeks into coming to the US, I met her. Now, long story short, we're now married 19 and a half years. We have a beautiful 13-year-old daughter. Things worked out. And part of this goal was she was graduating, I was graduating. We were supposed to go back into our respective countries. And we said, you know what? I don't want to live in Honduras. She doesn't want to live in Germany. Why don't we try this out here in the US? We love it here anyway. So we got jobs, and we had a work visa for a year. We got a job that luckily my work visa was extended into an H-1B visa, which is the visa that ultimately can get you a green card. And but it was a pretty, I'm forever grateful for the job. It was a very tough job. It was a very hardworking job. We worked 60, 70 hours a week. It was a very high demand job. It wasn't very well paid, but it was all these other things were there. And in combination, this job as a software IT consultant, even though I don't really have a software, I'm not good at software. I am not a software guy. This job and the constant pressure ultimately led us to make the decision to step out of corporate America and start our own business. So from that point of view, a negative situation, a situation of like pressure, 100% travel, for a situation of being gone, like literally from some Sunday night often to taking a red-eye flight to the other side of the United States and working 80 hours a week, coming back Friday night, that tired, barely being spending time at home. That entire environment ultimately was a blessing in disguise because yes, it got us the green card, which allowed us to stay in the country. Now we are both American citizens, but it also generated the pressure for us to move, the pressure for us to step out of our known path of what we had been taught, which is go get a good education, get a good job, work your career, work for 40 years, build up a career, and then retire when you're 65, and then travel around. And it broke us out of that to start questioning that worldview, start questioning that career path, and made us look around. And then we found real estate, and we found ultimately this absolutely different, weird niche of land and lot flipping, which is basically like house flipping just without the houses. So you can do almost everything. You can make the same profits or better. You can, and it's just simpler because you don't have to deal with a house. So we developed this real estate strategy, had to do it part-time while we still had our job because through the visa, we couldn't just quit our jobs because we would have lost our right to be in the United States. So we continued with the job while we were developing and perfecting this method. Then the green card arrived and we quit our jobs, and 8 months later we were millionaires and living an absolutely crazy life that I have to pinch myself every day ever since.
Wow, that's a very, I mean, great story. So I guess like I heard very similar stories for the people who are not, who were not born and raised in the United States and they talk about the United States as being one of those kind of opportunistic countries. So would you think before we dive into, land flipping and investing in other commercial asset classes, would you think you would have at least close to success that you're having right now if you never left Germany?
No, I think I would be a well-paid employee somewhere in middle management of some company, and I would work my 50 hours a week or something like that. And I would enjoy the weekends. I would enjoy the 6 weeks vacation or 8 weeks vacation that they give in Germany. And I would, and I would be not unhappy, but also not like happy. And I would just never have questioned probably the status quo that the millions are being brainwashed or asked to follow in, like the typical kind of like the progressions. And if I look at my friends from high school, from university, from college, they all fell into that. They all almost all of them. One is a high executive in a pharmaceutical company, but guess what? He travels 4 times. He's like, he lives in Paris and he's in New York City probably 3 times a month. So, I mean, that is exhausting. And he's like 52 years old. It's not easy on your body to travel like that. It's not easy on your family to travel like that. And but it's hard to break out after you have start putting in some big roots of like bought your house, married, have children, because you have all this extra responsibility. Luckily, we found this early on, and the pressures were put on right out of college in such an amount that I was like, 2 weeks vacation. I don't want to do anything. In 2 weeks vacation, you can't do anything. So no, I don't think I would be, both in terms of personal freedom, in terms of time freedom, in terms of monetary freedom, in terms of abilities to do things, I would be anywhere close to in Europe. I would be successful because I believe I'm a hardworking, relatively normally smart person. So I'm not less smart than anyone else out there. I'm not smarter than anyone else out there either, but I'm dedicated, hardworking. I would have made a career somewhere else too, but not to the degree of what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And that's great. Because I had, again, those conversations with a few people who came from UK and now they're actively investing in multifamily deals and they're building their own portfolios, and I asked them exactly the same question and they gave me a very similar answer to yours. So that's very interesting. So part of your journey, I mean, you met Michelle. So can you talk about, again, for the couples who are looking to get involved into starting your own personal businesses, like how do you not kill yourself and at the same time scale this business together working as a couple?
Okay, so yes, so we work together for now 18 to 19 years. We work together in this business. We often do want to kill each other, so that's definitely something that happens like on a monthly basis or so, that we disagree. But the key to it is to, number one, consider the other party, the other, like in this case, my wife, a true partner. It's not, I'm not smarter than she is, and she's not smarter than I am. Or actually, I'm smarter in some things and she's smarter in other things. It's the better way of putting it, right? So when she comes, there's often a tendency that one takes charge and runs it, and the other is the support person, right? In many married couples, it's the way that the man often is the one that runs everything, and the wife does HR and accounting. Well, that's not how we operate. And I think that's not how we could operate, because Michelle is a brilliant human being and she has absolutely fantastic ideas. Then also, I'm the more entrepreneurial by nature kind of thing. I'm curious about new things always. And she is the very much processes, stability, and reliability kind of thing. So when she comes up with an idea, then it's a 1 year strategic idea that we implement that probably I on my own would never be able to pull through, because on month 3, I would already jump off to the next opportunity. I would jump on into the next kind of rabbit hole. But with her is that stabilizing factor. So what it required is for me to learn that there's things that Michelle brings to the table where she is substantially better than I am. And there's things that she needs to come to the conclusion that I bring to the table that I'm substantially better. So as a result, we have learned to respect each other. But then the other part is that the fights happen when we both have the exact same responsibilities. So in other words, if you understand that if one partner brings in a really great idea, then you're like, okay, great, let's implement that idea. And then you still need to do a role separation of who takes care of what. And then you need to honor that role separation and not step into each other's roles. It's like the same if you have a marketing head of marketing and the head of operations. The head of operations doesn't step into marketing all the time, and the marketing operations head doesn't step into head of marketing doesn't step into operations all day long. It would create let them both develop their expertise, and as long as the goal is clear, this is the outcome. I need to do this on marketing, I need to do this on operations in order to get there, then it works well together. So what we do is we identify a few strategic initiatives and a few strategic goals for the year. Then we divide who does what, who is in charge of what, and then it works really well. But it requires that fundamental understanding and agreement of mutual respect and mutual acceptance, that one doesn't just push the other one out of the way and say like, no, leave me alone, this is crap, let me do it my way, because that's the recipe for all these fights and the breakups and the things like that.
Got it. So I'm sure you hear some of those stories again through your, through your student work, because I know you have a lot of those people coming in, you're educating them how to flip the land, which of course we're going to be talking here in a second. And I'm sure there's a lot of those people who are joining your courses, of course, that you can find on landprofitgenerator.com. It says LPG courses. You're going to find those people working as a couples and building their businesses. So you're going to have those struggles and obstacles, and it's all about what you just said, just understanding each other's strengths and working on those strengths, kind of supporting each other and pushing each other if that's, necessary sometimes. Yeah, so that's a really great advice. So what about, this land flipping business? Can you, tell us, because again, for me, I personally, I never heard about that before, maybe because I'm from Europe and that's not very common when it comes to real estate investing. So how does it look like? How people can get involved with that? And, just take us through the process, please.
Right. Okay. So land flipping is like house flipping, just without the house. As a matter of fact, I was like kind of half jokingly say that every house flipper out there that ever flipped a house really misunderstood what they were doing, because you never flip a house. Like if you look at the deed, the document that transfers ownership from person A to person B, it doesn't describe the house. I've never seen a deed that says this is property on 2-3 and it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,000 square foot house or 2,000 square meter, 200 square meter house. It describes the land. What you sell is always the land. It just happens that what makes the land more valuable in those cases is a house that sits on the land. So therefore, people talk about the house, but what they really sell is the land. So with that said, every house flipper out there is really a land flipper. So it's just that they focus more on what's on the land. So having said that, though, land flipping just works different than house flipping. Land flipping is really a method just like houses, where there's people who don't want their house anymore because they passed away and the heirs now have it, or they've gotten they have an emergency, they need to move away, they need some cash, or in land it's more like they bought it because they wanted to build a house on there down the road, like for their retirement. It's a lake, it's a property on a lake in a beautiful area, an hour away from a big city, and they wanted to, or 2-3 lots from a lake, they wanted to build a house there so that once they retire, they can go out there. Well, something happened. I don't know, whatever might happen. They decided not to build that house. They decided not to move there. They wanted to be close to the grandchildren and so on. So many reasons why people don't want land anymore. The biggest one is that when you just hold land, it costs you money. There's property taxes in the United States. You have to pay annual property taxes. And sometimes on a $100,000 piece of land, it could be $3,000 a year that you have to pay. Now, if you don't use the land, that's a lot of money to pay to not use something, right? Mm-hmm. And so people don't want to pay this anymore. They can't pay it anymore. They don't want to take out more money out of their pocket. They just want to get rid of that property. So what we do is we figured out how to find these people and how to find not just the ones that want to sell it, but the ones that truly don't want their property anymore. We call them the non-wanters. So the non-wanters are the ones that just don't want it anymore. They have that garage sale mentality, right? That flea market mentality is like, yeah, this I paid $100 for this. Well, give me $5 and sure, take it. I want it out of the house, right? So those are the ones that allow us to give their property to us for anywhere typically between 5 and 35 cents on the dollar. So a $50,000 property you can put on a contract for $10,000. Now, if you have such a bargain, you don't have to go sell it for $50,000. You can mark it up to $28,000 or $30,000, 60% of market value, which is obviously a great bargain, and it sells very quickly. Now, in the process, you make $20,000. I have it on a contract for 10, this is for 30, it's worth 50. You sell it quickly, you make $20,000 minus perhaps some closing costs and the attorney and closing fees. Perhaps you make $18,000. Anyone okay with that? Yes. But the nice part is, because it's land, you don't have to go inspect it, because what is there to see? Trees and bushes and dirt, right? You don't have to go, and there's maps around. You can go on Google Maps, Google Earth. The counties, like the equivalent, I don't know how it's called in Ireland, but the counties have geographical information system softwares that they're free to use. Everything is public record in the United States. The entire ownership, who owns the property, where the property is, what it's valued, everything is public record. You can access that from anywhere in the world. As a result, we actually have students in Europe that do this in the United States. We have lots of students in Germany, because word got around that I'm from Germany, that the Germans started looking at that, and there are plenty of students that do 20, 30 deals a year from over there. We even have one student in Ireland that does deals from Ireland too. And then we, so what I want to say is, yeah, so you don't have to go see them. You don't have to meet anyone at the property, because with the houses, you can do house flips remotely, but you still have to arrange for somebody to actually go to the property and open the door and go look at it and estimate repairs. And you got to have an inspector come in, perhaps an appraiser come in. Usually houses are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars or $100,000 plus. So you need to get a loan for it. So you have to go to that. Well, when you pick up a $30,000 piece of land for $3,000, you don't need a loan. You don't need to go see it. You don't need to estimate repairs. You don't need to estimate roof repairs, foundation repairs, electric repairs, kitchen repairs, bathroom remodels. None of that factors in. So as a result, you actually don't need to know a whole lot about real estate, at least when you get started. All you need to learn is how to find these pieces of land, how to value these pieces of land, how to market these pieces of land, and how to work with a title company that does all the paperwork in the middle, and you can do deals. And most of our students on top of it do deals in a way that they don't even buy those properties. They put them on a contract, and then they use what's called an assignment to assign the deal over to the end buyer, or they use what's called a double closing, where the buyer's money, like in the example, we have a property under contract for $10,000, you're selling it for 30 and it's worth 50. The buyer brings in the $30,000. The title company takes the $30,000, sends $10,000 to the seller, and then subtracts their closing costs and sends $18,000 to you. It's pretty simple that way, right? So you don't even need to bring money to the table. And which in houses you can do too. A lot of my friends that do house flipping, they do assignments and double closings in the housing world. So what works in housing also works in land, but you have to be, there's much less tentacles involved, much less pieces involved, but the profits are the same.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting, because again, I already have like a ton of questions that I wanted to ask you, a little bit more specifics on land investing. So again, you mentioned again looking for land. So again, if I'm driving by, like let's say here in Ireland, imagine I'm in the United States, because again, I think it will apply a little bit more. If I'm driving around and I'm seeing all these kind of vacant lands, nothing stands on there. So how do I know that this land is going to be privately owned by somebody?
Okay. So the way you do that, and again, this is why this works so beautifully in the United States, it all comes down to privacy laws. So the privacy laws in Europe are very strict. I don't know Ireland, but I know Germany. It's like very strict. You can't even find out who owns the house next door. If that's a rental property and it's managed, let's say by a bank or so, it's impossible to find out who owns that property if you don't know somebody in the county or so. But legally, it's almost impossible to find out. Well, in the United States, this is all public knowledge, right? This is all public knowledge. You literally can go to the county assessor's database and look up who owns the property next door. But what you can also do is there's services that buy the data from all the counties, and they get a data feed every single day from the county with any kind of incremental changes. And you can go to those data services and you can buy the data. You can say, give me, I want this area of town. In that area, I want all the properties that are worth between $500,000 and $200,000, which is our sweet spot, $500,000 and $200,000. I want them with all the properties that are in this size. If you want to filter by size, like if you want to only go after a certain size, if it's a more rural area, we like larger properties, because in a rural area where people want to spend the weekends in, nobody wants a property of this size. People want a few acres, as we call it in the United States, a few acres, which is like 4,000 square meters, about an acre. So they want larger spaces, like 5 acres, 10 acres, and so on. And so you can search by all these different things, and you can say, and I want where the owner lives here or there or that. You can go through a whole bunch more criteria. And you can literally say, okay, how much is that? It gives you the results. It's like there's 5,000 properties like this in this county. It's like, great, I want to download them. Now it costs something about 5 cents a record. So 5,550. So for $250, you can download 5,000 records. And 5,000 records, if you pick the right county, then it could potentially be as many as 8 to 10 deals in there. So now if each deal makes it $10,000, it could be $50,000 to $100,000 in profits already, right? So you spend $250, you might make $50,000 to $100,000. That's a good trade-off. Or you start with 1,000. It's like, yeah, you know what? I don't want 5,000. Give me like 1,000 of those. So 1,000 costs $50. So you download those $50. Or you can also go directly to the county and say to the county, they can give you on a CD or email you the entire database of all property records in the county. It's all public record in the United States. So what we don't do is we don't drive down the road and look at this property, look at that property. Instead, what we go and we say, like, this area looks really good. It's about 20 minutes away from the big city. It has there's growth happening. The price levels are in the right area. This is an area that is very attractive for people who want to live a little bit outside of the city, but they don't want to be living in the middle of nowhere. They want to be in 20 minutes, they want to be at the grocery store. In 20 minutes, they want to be at the doctor's office, at the movie theater, at the restaurants, and so on. But they want to live a little bit more space, right? They want to have more space. So great. Or another area might be an area that's an hour away from a big city where you say, you know, with large mini ranches, where it's like where somebody can buy 40 acres, where 40 acres are only worth just like 20 hectares, which is like only worth perhaps $40,000, $50,000. And that you can pick them up for $10,000 and sell them to somebody else for $30,000, and they'll be totally happy with this, because now they work in the city, they live in the city, but on the weekend they get their RV, they get their motorbikes, they get their trailer, they get their dirt bikes, and they go their bicycles, their fishing gear, and they go out into the nature, into that property that they own. And close by, there might be a lake and things like that. So we specialize in three kinds of properties. Properties in the city, so-called infill lots, where you can build a house right away. Properties that are like a few miles outside of the city, so people that want to live a little bit more in nature but want to be close to the city can be there. Also, retirees can retire there more affordable and still be close to their doctors and their friends. And the larger acreage in the more rural areas that people want, that like the outdoors, camping and so on. In the United States, that's a huge business. Hunting is like public, right? Anyone can go hunting often. Like people like hunting, they like fishing, they like hiking, they like kayaking, they have big RVs. They're like small houses, right? And they bring them behind they pull them behind their cars and go into these areas. And they don't want to be in an RV park where they have to park it like that. And it's like each one of these mobile campers is like right next to the other one. They want their own large property, right? That they can roam around in and so on. And so these properties sell very, very quickly. They have a built-in buyer space. And so when we find those, so again, it comes back to the transparency of the data. It's all available in the data. You can sort by all these things. You can get what you want. And then what we do is we send them a letter. We send the owners a letter, because including in the data transparency is who owns it, where do they live. It's all public information in the US. It's absolutely crazy. Wow. And so you can download it for a few dollars. Some counties even give it to you for free. And then you send them a letter. And if you're international, you can virtualize that. We work with a mailing house here in the US. So our German students and our Canadian students and our Mexican students and our so there's a couple in Australia. They do like 300 deals a year from Australia in the United States. You just send out the letters to a mailing house. You just send you fill out an online form, you submit it, you upload the Excel spreadsheet of who you want the letters to receive. You upload our letter, which is in our program, the Land Profit Generator program, and then you set up an American phone number system that works off your cell phone as an extra app. And you can completely, like, for example, this is my phone system here. It's just a separate additional phone system in addition to my regular phone. It's an app called Ring Central. There's many others out there. And now you have a completely virtual business. You can be in Ireland and do deals in the United States. My brother is closing on a deal right now from Germany that will make him $30,000, knock on wood, right? Knock on wood that it goes through. But he had, so this is a deal that he put on a contract a few weeks ago. He found a buyer very quickly. The buyer is now buying it. And he hasn't been in the United States. He lives in Germany. He hasn't been to the United States through the entire COVID time. Last time he was here was just a year ago for Thanksgiving.
That is very interesting. Again, that is a very interesting strategy. So the fact that all this information is public accessible for a fraction of a cost, with all the owner's information, which of course sometimes I do understand probably it happens, and I want to talk about the process of finding those deals, because you mentioned that you're looking at, let's say, 5,500 deals, which of course, as you mentioned, is going to cost like $250. And from those 5,000 deals, you said you can find 10 deals, like which we're talking to narrowing down to a very small amount of lands that you're going to be looking at, because again, you said you're aiming for that sweet spot. So can you talk about that sweet spot? You mentioned like $5,000 to $200,000. Like, why exactly are you picking this sweet spot?
So the $5,000 is really lower than I like it to be. I like to personally be at $10,000 and above, because there is such a thing like junk land. There's like such a thing like worthless land. And first of all, we want to be not, we want to eliminate that. So anything under $5,000 or $10,000 has a risk that it is just undesirable land. So we want to be away from that. Right? There's land in the United States that is an acre. It's like, that's 4,000 square meters. That is worth $500. First of all, it is ugly. It doesn't have water, doesn't have electricity, doesn't have a road, it's landlocked, and so on and so forth. But most importantly, you can't make money with it, right? You can't, even if somebody wanted it, I mean, you have to buy it. Like the closing cost with the title company costs $1,000. You can't buy something for, even if you get it for free or for $1, you would have to pay more in the transfer of the deed, the closing cost, than the property is even worth. So for that reason alone, you want to be at the minimum of like $5,000 to $10,000. Because let's say you have a property that's worth $7,000, you get it on a contract for $300, which is very normal, because you can't pay much more for it. Now you add $1,000 in closing costs, and now you sell it for $5,000, and the buyer pays his share of the closing cost, of the buying closing cost. You still make $4,000 in profits. That's okay. I can be okay. So I'm okay with a $4,000 profit. I mean, you do 2 deals like that a month, you make almost $100,000 a year, right? That's okay. People can live off that. But you can't, if a property is worth $2,000, it doesn't make sense to even deal with it. So therefore, I like to be at the $5,000 or ideally even at the $10,000 level. Those $5,000, $7,000, $8,000 deals, they work, but they're kind of nice. I don't focus on them. They kind of come along as you do deals anyway. The nice part is, however, once you get above the 100 and particularly to $200,000 level, even the last seller knows that this property has a lot of value, and they're most likely not just giving it to you for $5,000. So the amount of effort it takes to get a deal that's worth more than $200,000, the amount of mailings, the amount of follow-up that it takes to get that starts being too much for the return. And it becomes a treasure hunt above $200,000. But between particularly the $5,000 and $100,000, but also all the way up to $200,000, it becomes a predictable business model. Because there's lots of properties available in that price range. There's lots of properties, I mean, hundreds of thousands of properties in the United States that are in that price range, hundreds of thousands of properties that the owners have owned for many, many years that they no longer want, or the heirs have now. And these are deals that you can pick up reliably. So it is not a treasure hunt, but it is actually a predictable business model. So once you work out, once you get used to how this works, you have a predictable model that says you send out 1,000 letters, you get, let's say, 50 to 100 phone calls back, because our response rate on our letters is like 5 to 10% once you worked yourself, once you honed in on it, which is a very nice high response rate. So you get 50 to 100 letters, phone calls, you make 50 to 100 offers. And by the way, those offers can be virtualized again. The mailing house can send them out for you, or you can send them by email or so. And then 50 to 100 offers, and then you get 2 to 4 properties accepted from that. You put them on the market. Each property has between $5,000 and usually $50,000 in profits, with an average of like about $15,000. So you get 2 to 4 deals at $15,000. You make $30,000 month after month after month after month. It's a predictable business model that our students go through, learn how to do that, and now with a fairly low effort, because if you think about it, in the American house flipping world, or let alone multifamily is so fought after these days that it takes you, you have to fly places, you have to visit places, you have to stay in touch with brokers every day of the week. You have to do all these different things in order to potentially once a year to get a deal. It's absolutely crazy. Versus here, we can get as many deals as we want. We have one of our coaches in our organization does 300 deals a year. Another one, and he does it alone without even, I think he has one part-time virtual assistant that helps him, because there's no complications involved. There's no houses. There's no, oh my God, we found pipes are broken. Or we found the electric panel is too low. We need to replace it. Or we found there's mold in the kitchen. We need to now remove it. Or we found the roof needs to be replaced. Or we found, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. None of this applies here. It's simply a matter of contacting the seller, getting an answer, doing an analysis on the property of what is it worth, making an offer, having the offer accepted, putting it on the market. And even the marketing that we do, we market our properties either to realtors where they do all the work, or we create a beautiful listing, which we have step-by-step instructions in our program on how to do that. And that listing, then people put that out on free social media websites like Facebook, like Zillow, like Craigslist and so on. And then people come, they want to be interested in the property. We sign a contract with them, all of which we provide to our students. And then a title company closes it again and they make money.
Got it. So again, love it, because I think for a lot of people who don't like to go through the process of building relationships with the brokers and with potential passive investors, and of course it's quite hard and tiring process, especially these times where a lot of people are fearful of, putting their own capital with some of the people who maybe don't have a huge of a track record investing themselves. It could be very tiring, So the fact that you can invest with a fraction of what it takes to get involved with multifamily, let's say syndication or something else, and you can kind of do it yourself, even though you're from different country, it is a very interesting approach. So that is awesome. So talking about pricing items, can you talk about, again, once you're going to come across, let's say, a potential land that you want to flip, would you have a price, let's say, on that kind of listing appraised already, or what's the kind of underwriting process, if we can call it that way, of you kind of finding out if you can squeeze any profit from that potential land?
So the pricing is always such that you leave. There's two ways we price this. There's two ways we price these deals, and one of them is that if it's a wholesale deal, as we call it, then we are pricing it such that we usually start around 70% of market value, and then we drop all the way down potentially, if we have to 50% of market value. Because if we have them on a contract for 5 to 35% of market value, we have enough buffer there. If we have a property at 25% of market value on a contract, then let's say it's a $100,000 property. We have it on a contract for $25,000. Can we afford to sell it for $50,000? Yes, of course, all day long, right? Am I happy with a $25,000 profit? Absolutely, I am, every day of the week. Right? I only need 10 of those and make $250,000. I'm okay with that. Right? Now, will I try to sell it at $70,000 first? Yes. And if in a week or two nobody buys it, I'll drop the price to 65, to 60, to 55, to 50. And every time you do a price drop, activity starts again. And soon enough, you got to that level where people are like, okay, I can't resist anymore. I just have to buy this now. Now, the second way we sell properties actually is a different way. It's actually, we figured out a way to make land cash flow, which is one of the biggest issues that people have. Like, so, and that is that we love selling properties with seller financing, also called owner carryback. So what we do in that case, let's say it's a $30,000 property, you have it on a contract for $3,000. You put it on the market at full market value or close to full market value, but you offer to sell it with a low down payment and monthly payments. So in this case, you ask somebody perhaps for a 15% down payment. Is that reasonable? Yes, right? It's not too much. You ask somebody to buy a piece of land for you with a 15% down payment. Great. So you market this property at $30,000. What is 15% of that? $4,500. How much did you have it on a contract for? $3,000. So you're getting as a down payment $4,500, with the thumb being like my 500 here. Again, $4,500, which is more than what you paid for the property in the first place. So even here, you can do the double closing. You can go to a title company and say, hey, please use the $4,500 down payment of the buyer to pay $3,000 of that to the seller, keep $1,000 as a title company fee, send me $500, and then have the buyer sign this loan servicing agreement that they now start making payments of $500 a month for the next 7 years. And now all of a sudden, the buyer now starts making $500 a month payments, which you have managed by a loan servicing company, so you don't have to collect the checks and wires and things and that. Have a professional company deal with that, and they just do one electronic transfer into your bank account once a month. But now you have no money in the deal, zero money in the deal, $400, $500 in your pocket, and you receive $500 every single month for the next 7 years. You add that up, that's $6,000 a year. 6,000 times 7 is, what is that? It's $42,000. You made a $42,000 profit without having a dollar invested in the property. That's our second way that we like to sell these properties. And actually a lot, and if we can, like any deal that we get with a low, where we buy it real cheap, we usually sell it, seller financing, and get that cash flow going. Now that cash flow, $500 doesn't sound like that much, but if you add it up over time, then if you over 10 deals, 20 deals, 30 deals, if you do like one deal a month like that, you have $6,000 a year. If you do that for 3 years, you have $18,000 a year coming in. That's over $200,000 a year, $18,000 a month coming in. That's over $200,000 a year of pure cash flow. And when my wife and I figured this out, we put the pedal to the metal. We built this up to over $70,000 a month in cash flow. And then when the market shifted, which by the way, our method kept working to the 2008-9 downturn, to the bottom on the way up, but it works better today than it ever has. But when that happened, we were able to take all this excess cash and start investing in distressed houses, in multifamily, in commercial property. And we started rolling that money over into additional deals, into additional asset classes. So now we use land flipping as what we call our cash machine, our cash and cash flow machine, and we roll the excess of that over, all our profits over, into additional asset classes. And as a result, we own over 700 apartment units, active and passive. We own a portfolio of single family houses. We own commercial property. And we started here as 2 immigrants with 2 suitcases. So we understand that what we've created is a true wealth creating machine here with land flipping that spits out cash that now has enabled us to build a generational wealth machine out of it.
Got it.
And anyone can do that. Our students are doing now the exact same thing we're doing too.
Yeah, and that's pretty, I mean, for me, I'm just listening and I'm like, wow, we're talking about, again, a very small investment. And of course, there is a lot of kind of, work required for us, to when it comes to, again, looking and finding those deals and knowing how to evaluate those deals. And part of that, I mean, how do you determine, as you mentioned, the market price? Because for multifamily deals, it's based on, again, NOI, cap rates, and people look at those metrics. So what do you look at when you look at the land? What do you actually know? Like, how do you gonna price it, when it comes to the market price? Like, what is it based on?
Yeah, so the land, the land, we estimated there's 5 ways to value land. The first one is the simplest one that nobody thinks about, but then people always come to me, it's like, Jack, how do you value land? My answer is, how do you value houses? Well, I look at what comparable houses have sold in the area, and I was like, yes, you do the same thing. That's exactly what you do. Now, where do you find that information? All over the internet again. Again, America is transparent with that in that regard, right? It's data. You go on Zillow.com, which is like the largest website for real estate. You go on Zillow, you select land, you select the last year or so, and you select, you go into the area where your property is that you're about to make an offer on, and it'll tell you, and you select sold, and it tells you what other properties in that area have sold in the last year. And if it's a high activity area, there might be hundreds. Then you go 6 months, 30 days, 90 days, 30 days. You see what are the most recent sales. If it's a low activity area, you might have to go 6 months, a year, or even 2 years out there. And that's still okay, because in low activity areas, prices don't go up quickly or go down quickly. So you can go a little bit further back than house flippers typically do. The house flippers want to know like 90 days, 180 days maximum, but and we can go up to a year or 2 years. That's just fine in areas where there's not that much movement is. And if there's a lot of movement, you should have a lot of recent sales. Now, if there's no recent sales in the area of properties that are similar to the one that you're looking at, then you have to switch over into comparable sales, right? You can look at comparable listed properties. You can look at what are listed properties listed for, and then you see who lists them. If it's a bunch of realtors, the real estate agents that list those properties, you can assume that these realtors didn't just like come up with like a wild guess, right? They came up with something that kind of makes sense based on their own research. So you can use that as a comparable. You just subtract a little bit from that. And if that doesn't work, you can adjust for the size. And if that doesn't work, you can go via assessed value and you can see what is the assessed value, because they usually have the county assessed value has a relationship to the market value. And if that doesn't work, you can call a realtor. And if that doesn't work, you can, if it's in a populated area, you can also calculate it as a percentage of the value of the houses in the area. So there's 5 to 6 different ways that you can find the value, all of course described in more detail with demonstrations in our programs. But so it's really easy, and once you get used to that, like now, it never takes me more than 2 to 3 minutes to figure out the value of a property. When I started out, of course, it might have taken sometimes 20, 30 minutes to figure out the value of a property because you're not used to it yet. As one of my mentors always says, everything worth doing is worth doing poorly at the beginning, because nobody's born a master. Nobody knows how to do these things naturally. Nobody wakes up and says like, I know how to do those things. No, you learn those things, right? And ideally you accelerate and you compress the time to learn it by following proven methods.
Exactly. So that is awesome. So again, I just opened up Zillow, on Google as well. So I'm just looking at Zillow land at the moment, and just Texas land and lots for sale. I'm seeing 35,000 listings. So talking about that again, when it comes to making those investment decisions, like how do you pick the states? Is there any particular kind of states that people should focus on when they're buying land, and how well of a market people should know before they're making those decisions where to buy land?
So the beautiful thing is that this works all over the United States. Again, the concept is you can do this from anywhere in the world in the United States, because the United States happens to be huge, happens to have lots of vacant land, happens to have large distances, which all drive sellers to say, like, oh, I know I inherited this property, but it's 300 miles away or 500 miles away. I'm never going to go out there. You want it? Sure, take it, right? So it encourages this kind of behavior. If you do this in Ireland, everything is only a half a day drive away, right? So you can just say like, yeah, let's go for a weekend trip and go look at their land. Half a day, you're nowhere in the United States, right? You need 3 days almost to drive from coast to coast. So nobody does that, or most people don't do that. So this is, but the most important thing is the privacy rules, because it's all public information in the United States. You can, and there's services available. You can do this from anywhere. You don't ever have to step foot into the United States. You can do this all from anywhere in the world. And that's the beauty of it. So having said that, it works everywhere in the United States. I have a student of ours that lives in New Hampshire and does deals in Alaska and in Florida and in New Hampshire and in Texas. And it doesn't matter, because you also never will have to go see the property unless you really, really want to. But there's no reason for you to see the properties. I've done deals on Hawaii that I've never seen, right? Done other deals in Hawaii that I have seen because I happened to be in Hawaii and I drove there and I look at them. But other than that, I've done deals from Hawaii to Florida, and from Indiana or Wisconsin all the way to Texas, and it doesn't matter where it is. It's like the only place I would think it's hard to do deals would probably be Manhattan, right? Because there's no more land, basically, right? Or if it is, it's worth like $3 gazillion. So other than that, I mean, even like, yeah, it doesn't matter where you are. it works everywhere. So this is truly what it means is that if somebody's listening to this and they live in the United States, a lot of people get frustrated in the house flipping world because they live in Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles, a very, very small house costs $600,000. And anything that, let's say in Alabama, the biggest house in Montgomery, Alabama, probably costs less than a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom house in Los Angeles. So you gotta, so they're like, I can't afford to do anything here in California. I can't afford to do anything. And this method is like, so what? You live in California. Where do you want to do deals? You want to do deals in Kentucky? Do deals in Kentucky. You want to do deals in Florida? Do deals in Florida. So it opens up the entire United States from you. As a matter of fact, we even have students now that travel in their camping, in the bus, in their RV around the United States and do deals from their RV. We have students that have moved to Italy and they're sitting in a cafe in Rome with Wi-Fi and they're doing deals from the cafe in Rome in the United States. We have students, one of our coaches actually traveled for 6 weeks, pre-COVID, traveled to 6 weeks to Southeast Asia, and he came back with $53,000 in profits from land deals that happened, that he did while he was in Southeast Asia. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can do this anywhere in the United States.
Got it. So when we're buying those land lots to flip, how much of end user are we focusing on? Are we focusing on to buy, to sell, to flip it to somebody who is going to be, into agriculture or a developer? Like, is that very important?
So typically, again, the 3 kinds of properties we focus on are the ones right in the city, which you think about a street, 35 houses, 1 empty lot. That one we often sell to a developer. Mm-hmm. Or we call it the builder here in the US. So we sell that to a builder because it's already developed the area, everything is there. Somebody just needs to come in and build a house. We sell it to the developer or we sell it to the neighbor. Which neighbor doesn't want to have twice the size of his backyard and not potentially a house right next door to it? They enjoy that extra space, right? So that's the 2 buyers for that. Then the properties, they're a few minutes outside of the bigger cities, like in the outskirts of town, in what we call the path of growth, right? The path of growth. Those properties we sell to 2 kinds of buyers. One of them is also a developer. It's actually, in this case, a developer. If it's a larger piece, close enough, they might be interested in buying this thing and then developing it and putting 50 houses on there and so on. Mm-hmm. The second kind of buyer is what we call a financial buyer. A financial buyer is somebody that has money to invest, but looks at that, has done his research and says, hey, the city's growing in this direction. So the city's growing and each year it's growing by 1 mile. This property is 5 miles outside, or each year it's growing by half a mile. This property is 5 miles outside of the city, so it should take about 10 years before development arrives at this property. So now if this is 2 acres, those 2 acres might be worth today $80,000. We put it on a contract for $25,000. We sell it to that financial investor for $55,000. So we make $30,000 in profit. He pays cash for that because he has the money. He took it out of the stock market. He has that money and he now sits on that property. And he sits and sits and sits for 10 years until this entire area is now surrounded with buildings and houses. Now his 2 acres is no longer worth $80,000. It's now worth $500,000. That's a great return for him over 10 years. So he buys that for those reasons. Actually, I own property. Michelle and my wife and I, we own about 15 to 20 properties in exactly locations like that we just hold on to. We might have another 10, 15 years to go, but we paid $3,000 to $7,000 for these properties. They're worth $30,000 today, and they will be worth $300,000 when the city is all around. So that's okay. We're paying a little bit property taxes on them. There's some ways to minimize those. And then we have it. So the third kind of buyer is in the outskirts of town in the path of growth is what we call the future retiree. The United States has a retirement problem and will soon have a retirement problem. And that is that most people have not saved enough money for retirement in order to retire in the same level of comfort that they're living right now. It's a fact. It's a fact. This happens all over the world. In aging societies, like Germany has an aging society, has an old age poverty problem right now. United States will have an old age poverty problem. So what happens is some people understand that. So what they're realizing, they're living in a $400,000 house, paying a $2,000 mortgage a month, and they're realizing when they retire, they only make $2,000 a month. They cannot longer maintain this lifestyle. So if they're smart, what they're doing is like, where can I live? I don't want to live in a small little village or somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. So they're looking outside of town, and what they see is you offering on a nice street in a nice little area, a full acre or 2 acres for $30,000 today. They're like, okay, I can pay $5,000 down, make $500 a month payments over the next 7 years, pay that thing off. And then when I'm ready to retire, I can take a mobile home, like these manufactured homes, or I can build a small house that costs me $100,000. And for a total of $130,000, I have a place that I can retire that is free and clear, that I don't have a mortgage, or if I have a mortgage, it's like $400. And now I can live on the $2,000 that I get in Social Security plus my savings. Right? So there's a lot of buyers like that. They're in their 50s, mid 50s typically, when they realize, or younger families that say like, screw COVID. COVID has made our business explode. People don't want to be in these small houses anymore. They don't want to be in apartments anymore, where they walk down the hallway, somebody sneezes and they get COVID. Right? They want space. They want out there. So that has actually driven our business has doubled last year from this year from last year. Yeah. Because all these COVID people, they just want other people that are afraid of COVID. They just want land out there. People that bought RVs, like trailers, they want a piece of land to park it there. People wanted the outdoors. They want to enjoy social distance, space, fun, and so on. So a lot of those buy it. They're young families or future retirees. And then the larger acreage in the rural area, it's all the fun people. It's all the COVID people and the fun people. They buy these properties up like crazy. So that's how we buy. That's how we focus on. So not so much development land. It's more our end buyer is typically one of these 4 or 5 people that I just shared with you.
Mm-hmm. And that's beautiful. So again, yeah, during the COVID, it just proved the fact again, because eventually it would happen anyway, because where else are you going to build up in a city if it's already compact? There is no other kind of vacant lots unless building up, which again, for other cities, the way their infrastructures are, they cannot probably build up. So they're going to build in the outskirts of the city. They're going to expand. And, people like yourself or your students having lands in those places, it will eventually appreciate in price over time. Of course, if you know what you buy, and you kind of have to probably know what the city is going to be about when they're going to start making those moves and if they're going to build something in the future. But that is awesome. That is awesome. So again, COVID just proved that you're making, the right decisions for that. So, but let's say buying those properties, let's say you made a flip, so you made a profit, let's say $5,000 or $10,000, dollars. So is that going to be like a capital gains tax that you have to pay on that? Or what way is going to be that?
It depends. Yes, no, it is ordinary income tax, because it's your holding time on the property was 5 minutes typically, right? So if it's a cash deal, because if you use your own money, you bought it and you sell it the next day. Like with the deal that my brother's doing right now, again, this is a deal that we actually bought, and then he actually bought, and like 4 or 5 days later, he sells it again. Well, that doesn't qualify for any short-term long-term capital gains taxes in the United States. It's short-term income. However, it's short-term, it's ordinary income after you subtract your ordinary business expenses. And that's a beautiful thing, particularly if somebody has a job right now. You don't get to subtract from your job anything. Your car is your personal car. You do a trip to visit your family across the country, that's a personal trip. Guess what? Once you do this business, your car is necessary for business, because you got to meet with your bank, you got to meet with the thing. So you have to talk to your CPA, but you can write off a certain percent of your car. If you visit family on the other side of the country, is there land around where they live? Yes. Can you go visit a county, get some maps, talk to some officials, look at some land, look at some areas, get a lay of the land? Could that be classified as a land research trip? Yes, talk to your CPA. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not a CPA. I'm not an attorney, right? But could you do that? Yes. So all of a sudden you get to now dinners that you go out there. Could you now potentially write them off? Yes, potentially. Right? So you got to talk to a CPA about that, but you can start living that corporate lifestyle that allows you to subtract thousands, and if you do it right, even tens of thousands of dollars per year, plus the mailing costs and things like that, education costs, it's all startup costs, you can write off all off. So now your profits are subject to first reducing that, and then you pay taxes on that, which often puts you in a different tax bracket, and you pay less taxes. Also, when you do seller financing, you don't get taxed on the profit on paper. You only get taxed on the profit as the cash comes in. So if you buy something for $1,000 and you sell it for $11,000 with seller financing with $1,000 down payment, then you have made a $10,000 profit on paper, right? Because you bought it for 1 and sold it for 11. That's a $10,000 profit. You don't have to pay taxes on the 10,000 right now, but if they pay you $500 or $300 a month, you pay taxes on the $3,600 a month that comes in, minus the cost basis, minus your ordinary expenses, minus et cetera, et cetera. So then you end up not paying very much taxes anymore. So this is how you scale this and build this. But then the biggest thing is comes in when you really built this big, which is that's when where the other kind of assets come in for us. When you really build it big, that's when we started rolling that cash over into houses and multifamily and other things, because with that now we get massive depreciation. And since we're real estate professionals, we do this in the United States. A real estate professional is defined as somebody by the IRS. It's defined by somebody who does at least 750 hours a year of real estate activity. So since I'm a real estate professional, I can take those depreciation losses, those paper losses, and wash them against any other income that I have, which ultimately leads to you further reducing your income that you pay taxes to. Having the cash in the pocket, but pay less taxes.
Exactly. So yeah, so that is a great kind of piece right there, with the United States, with all the tax write-offs and, appreciation, depreciation available. Again, that's probably available in other countries too. But, the way it's structured is just, it makes a ton of sense, to do something with the United States. Again, as you mentioned, that you're moving into multifamily space, and again, having currently 750 units as active and passive investor, and part of that is a co-owner also in those deals. So can you talk about your personal decision, why moving into multifamily? Because again, there's a lot of people right now during the COVID or before the COVID, they're talking about developing, redevelopment, mobile home parks, storage units, office space, anything like that. So why multifamily in particular?
Right. So I'm a huge fan of Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett says, one of Warren Buffett's mantras is that he keeps all people, the financial advisors and everyone tells you that don't put your eggs all in one basket. And I think that makes perfect sense for somebody who has a job and for somebody who has not, his focus is not investing and so on, and has a financial planner do that, and they're doing them a good service in order to do that. However, I only have one expertise, that is real estate. Right? Real estate, I know it inside out. I live it, breathe it. This is my fascination. I found what I will do for the rest of my life. Real estate investing, and real estate education. I love changing people's life. We're on a mission to create 1,000 millionaires to land flipping in the next 2 years. So we're out there screaming it from the rooftops, have educational programs and things like that. But our own thing, I only know one thing. So my focus is, we have all our eggs in one basket, which is real estate. We just monitor that basket really closely, right? So we make sure that we are on top of that basket and know all the things. So with that said, we realized that if I want to retire, you really cannot retire on flips. Like, talk to any house flipper. They tell you how much money they made and everything, but you cannot retire on just flips. Because a flip is what we call a one-time cash activity. So we created our own kind of lingo around it. I even wrote a book about it called Forever Cash. So it's the name of our podcast too. So it's a one-time cash activity, meaning you buy something for 1,000, you sell it for 11, you make $10,000, one-time cash transaction. You have 10,000, you buy something for 20, sold it for 50, you make $30,000. It's great. It's better than mowing the neighbor's lawn for 20 bucks because it's $30,000. It's better. But still, once that $30,000 is used up for whatever you use it up with, pay the mortgage, buy a car, things like that, go on vacation, that money's gone. You cannot retire on it. So therefore, what you can retire on is income that comes in forever. So therefore, even the seller financing loans, they create fantastic stability. If you get $500 a loan coming in for the next 7 years, that's great. But after 7 years, the cash flow ends too. So you have to keep doing it. So we just had a thinking exercise, my wife and I, which is like, well, what happens when we're 85? Right now, at the time, we were like 35 or so, 35, 40. What happens when we're 85? Do we still want to do land flips at that time in order to create the big checks, which is exciting, and I probably will do that still, right? So I probably will do that still. But I ask, like, what do I want to live off if I want to stop one day forever? And it's like, well, it can't be flips. So what it has to be cash flow from something else. And I don't want it to be a pile of money, because the pile of money invested in the wrong thing, like Enron, like whatever it is, different kind of companies that went bankrupt, is all of a sudden that pile of money can go poof with a stock market crash or with somebody stealing it or something like that. So it needs to be something else. And what we came to a conclusion, it is houses, it is apartment complex, it is commercial property. And as much as hassle that they have, and that's the truth, it's not easy business there. They have hassles, they have management, they have oversight, they have repairs, they have all the things that I talked to you about that land doesn't have, these things have. But they do ultimately pay cash flow, if they're well managed, for decades and decades and decades beyond our last days. And all the way, they will take care of not just our old age, but our daughter's life and her old age, and so on and so forth. And so this is the reason why we started saying, we don't stop land flipping. Land flipping is our income source, our cash and cash flow income source, but we use land flipping the way that a high-paid professional uses his job. Like if you're a high-paid professional, you make $500,000 as a neurosurgeon or whatever it is, then you want to stay if you enjoy it, you want to continue being a neurosurgeon, right? And you want to use the $500,000 and roll that over into investments of these asset classes, so that the day you retire from being neurosurgeon, you have the replacement of that income coming in forever. Well, I'm no neurosurgeon. I'm sorry, I'm not, right? So I don't have those amount of brain cells that are necessary for that. I just know real estate. So we use land flipping as a cash machine, take the cash profits from here, invest over here into these asset classes, and build up that cash flow, $500 and $1,000 at a time. And over 10 years, we build up, as I said, we own 350 apartment complexes where we are either the sole owner or the majority owner. We actively run those. We own 40 houses that we own free and clear. We have another 400 units that we own, that we are a large owner of the property, but we're passive. It's being operated by somebody else. And those together bring in more cash flow than I probably per year, enough cash flow to live happily ever after. So once you're at that point, it's life changes its quality, and you actually work for different reasons. That's why we share our method now in order to create the 1,000 millionaires. We want to leave a legacy behind, right? We create the 1,000 millionaires in the next 2 years, and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So in the beginning of a conversation, you actually mentioned one thing, which I want to expand a little bit on, because again, during the COVID, a lot of companies, a lot of industries actually got disrupted, and you've seen a lot of businesses who have been established for, 100 years and 200 years, and those companies are under right now. So again, and you mentioned that you love learning about some new stuff. You said you're curious about new things. So I thought, is it something to do again with businesses? And maybe you can talk about implementing, because I know you kind of do a lot of optimization in the business, especially when it comes to the land flipping also. So is there anything else that you see that could be applied again in a business, if it's land flipping or multifamily, that could help with the day-to-day operations or acquisitions or anything in that?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's lots of things. We just scratched the surface of what you can do with land. I mean, there's one of the things that we have done a few times is split land. Like if you take a 40-acre parcel, you split into smaller pieces. The smaller pieces now sold individually can be worth 3 to 4 times as much as the large piece was if sold on its own. Right, so you can make tremendous amount of profits if you start subdividing pieces of land. Now you can do a simple subdivision like we have done, where we just paper subdivided it, like create different legal descriptions, or you can go the elaborate route, working with the city and putting roads and those kind of things, almost like developing it. I haven't done the latter part of it, but now even some of our students have started doing those development pieces, and it's something that I want to get to eventually. But even just from our cookie cutter model, when we teach our students in coaching, for example, we have them go to phases of coaching, and in one of them is we're literally teaching them how to outsource 90% of what they do, so that they build a business where and one of our students just coined this just last week, coined that term. I love it, and that is that so that you truly have a business that the more money you make, the more free time you have. And that's kind of like the opposite of what most people's businesses look like. Ask any entrepreneur, the bigger the business, the less time they have, right? So, but we create a business here that land flipping, because in land flipping, you don't have to meet with anyone. You do this, it's 100% virtual. It's 100% from home. Like I haven't met anyone during the entire COVID time, and even before for years. You might talk to a seller on the phone occasionally. You might talk to a buyer on the phone occasionally, but you don't you don't meet anyone. You can do this all remotely from at home. So therefore, we have built automation systems. So the mailings automate, the offer calculator. We have a software that the offer can be calculated automatically, and recommendations be given to you. The listings can be generated semi-automatically, right? You can build a small team around you over time. All these automation and simplification steps allow you to ultimately do 5 to 10 times more than you did when you start out, with 80% less of the time. So one of our students, one of our actually coaches, does 100 deals a year, makes over $1 million a year, and he basically spends 2 to 3 hours a day on his business. That's it. And that's what we teach our coaching students. He's one of our head coaches there. So yes, there's ways, there's automation, virtual assistants, training, checklists, things like that you can put in place. It's a constant it's a constant process of new things popping up that we then teach our students. But yeah, you can do a lot in those areas to optimize it. This is not a manual process. This is a process that you want to learn the manual way out of the get-go, so you know, at least for once, you know all the steps. It doesn't take very long, but then you want to spend your effort on automating it and outsourcing the pieces so that you make money without having to be in your business.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So again, one thing that I wanted to ask you about the podcast also, Forever Cash, that's the podcast, Forever Cash podcast that you can find on, again, iTunes and all the podcast platforms. So can you talk about, what do you talk about on the podcast? Is it similar approach? Like what type of guests and conversations are you having there?
Yeah, I mean, the podcast has a lot of solo sessions of me just talking and explaining different aspects of the land flipping business. It also has some sessions with my wife and I together, especially the earlier sessions. Then she abandoned me and she started her own podcast. Not just kidding, but she started her own podcast on that. Then we do have interviews. I have interviews with students that talk about their angles. So our podcast is a lot about land flipping, because that's basically what we do, what we know best. We do have some episodes about multifamily in there, because obviously we have invested in those and currently are invested in those. We also have sessions with a few house flippers in there to talk about their models. But we shy away from bringing in a whole bunch of house flippers, because house flipping is not what we do. House flipping is not what we even kind of technically recommend, because all the hassles that come with the houses. So if we bring a house flipper in, then we bring it in perhaps because it has a specific angle on scaling, a specific angle on valuation, a specific angle on raising money, or things like that might be interesting to our audience.
Okay, got it. So what about, again, for the future? Like, what are you looking to accomplish for the future? Because again, we're talking about it's almost the end of the year, December. I don't know. You're probably watching this episode, so it's already 2021. But what about like when it comes to your own personal business? Where do you want to be? Because again, you're talking about creating your own kind of life of freedom and choices, and helping again to leave a legacy. Again, part of that is helping other people to build exactly the same, to live a life that they want and dream about. So like where do you position to be yourself in the next like 5 years? Is there anything else that you're planning to start on when it comes to business, different business ventures? Or are you going to continue to do land flipping, multifamily? Is there anything else in the pipeline that you would like to share with us also?
So we are looking at, that's a great and loaded question. So in 5 years from now, we have a plan of where we want to be financially at that time, and it's but at this point it's more about, again, Warren Buffett talks about the process of making money to him is a scorecard. He doesn't need more money to live on, but it shows him on whether or not he's winning in the business, in the game of business, right? So if you play cards, you know who's winning and who's not winning, right? So and in the game of business, money shows you whether you're winning or not winning. And so we're in that kind of phase of our life that we use that as a scorecard to get to certain points that we have set up. That won't change our quality of life anymore beyond what it is right now. We can already stay wherever we want to stay in the world, and we do that. But they're kind of like, I believe in mastery. I don't believe in perfection. I believe in mastery. And mastery is a never-ending process, because just like if you're like, you look at LeBron James, have won how many they call it world championship, but NBA championships in his career. He's not sitting down saying like, oh, I'm the best in the world, I'm gonna go chill now. No, every year the goal is to become, every day really is the goal, is to become Jack Bosch 2.0, right? A better version of ourselves is always the goal. And why not? And that's not just in terms of morality, in terms of like charity giving, in terms of being nice to my family, in terms of being a better human being. It's also in everything you do. I want to be better, right? I want to be better in being able to analyze deals. I want to be better in being able to sell quicker and able to sell deals. Even though they might sell in 2 days. Hey, I want to see if I can sell one in 1 day, right? It's constantly challenging yourself to become mastery and mastery. So more than that, it's about that. And yes, do we have certain goal lines on our educational business of how many students we want to have at the $1 million level? Well, the 2-year goal is 1,000 students. We want to have them at the $1 million level, so that we can say that we have generated 2,000 millionaires. Well, at that point, we might put the level up and add 5,000 students for the next 3 years. Or we might say, you know what, that's it, we've accomplished our goal. Likely not, but those things we don't look at that way. But yeah, definitely there's a 2-year goal there. There's a few 5-year goals, financially speaking. There's also goals in terms of, we have a 13-year-old daughter. She's only going to be with us for another 5 years. So certain things we're pulling back from, we're saying no to right now, in favor of having that time with our daughter. Like, for example, we're shutting down our own, like we usually front load our year with a lot of our activity we're planning out an absolute epic first 5 months of 2021 on all fronts of what we do. Because come the end of May, we take 6 weeks and we disappear. We just go to Europe, go visit my parents and visit my brother and his family, we'll go to perhaps South Africa, this year I want to go on a safari. We check off bucket list things. Just over the last 5 years, we've been Paris 5 years, we've been 5 times, we've been Egypt, we've been in Italy. And again, if living in Europe, it's not a big deal to go there, but living in the US on the West Coast, it's further away. We've been to Argentina, we've been to Tokyo, we've been to in Mount Fuji. We've been to Japan. To China, to Hong Kong. We've been to Thailand. We've been to the Maldives. We've been to Bora Bora. We've been to, so we love traveling. So we check it out, Jackbox. But so I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
It does, definitely. So look, because I think one of the biggest, like the biggest commodity for sure, it's time, because that's what everybody thinks about most of the time. Again, spend the time thinking about the time, which is not a good probably thing to do. They probably should be thinking more time, again, more about what to do. Again, if they're going to go to their personal websites, they will find a lot of these answers. If they want to create that time, again, I'm spending the quality time with the family, traveling, whatever they're thinking about would be the best possible time that you can spend on this earth. Because at the end of the day, once like everybody's gonna everything is kind of temporary, for people. So if we're gonna collect as many as possible memories, and again, those moments again where you're talking about leaving a legacy of 1,000 people, that was going to be 5,000 millionaires who you're going to create, and those ripple effects that will impact a lot of families and people and friends, and we talking about something that's bigger than us, bigger than the travel. Of course, we do enjoy that and family time, but again, so I love the cause, and I love where everything is going personally with your business, and I love the message, because I mean it's very interesting. I guess, you guys caught the message. So again, if you're looking for more information, as I mentioned, jackbosch.com or landprofitgenerator.com, and of course, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, because they built quite a tremendous community of people or like-minded people who love real estate, who loves to do land flipping, and again, maybe probably invest in the bigger things like multifamily. So again, go and check it out, these free resources, get in contact, again, with Jack or with Michelle personally, and have conversation. How can you get started in this business, which I think is very interesting one. So again, Jack, for you personally, want to say big thank you for coming over today and sharing all the tips, strategies, giving your personal journey, and why and how people can get involved with land flipping. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. So guys, before we're going to go, last thing that I want to ask you, if you pass this episode to your friends, and again, maybe your friend mentioned a couple of times that he or she would like to get involved with anything related to real estate, I think this episode would be a really great for those people, because during these times there is a lot of uncertainty. So bringing a little bit more certainty to those people. Look, you can get invested in the land, without tremendous amounts of dollars or euros. It's very interesting an investment, opportunity when it comes to flipping land. So make sure to pass this episode along to them. And as always, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.